Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrian. I'm 27 years old and I come from Chile. And if someone had told me just 6 months ago that I would be able to speak English confidently, hold long conversations, understand movies without subtitles, and pass an international job interview completely in English, I would have laughed and said that's impossible because back then, even introducing myself felt like climbing a mountain. Even simple sentences refused to come out smoothly. My mind would go blank. My heart would start racing. And I would panic before speaking. I used to translate every single word in my head, build the sentence slowly. And by the time I was ready to speak, the conversation had already moved on. I felt invisible in group discussions. I avoided speaking whenever possible. And deep inside, I carried this quiet belief that maybe English just wasn't for me. Maybe I was too late. Maybe some people are naturally good at languages and others simply aren't. But today, I want to tell you exactly how that belief was shattered. How I went from hesitation to confidence in just 6 months without expensive coaching centers, without traveling abroad, and without following the outdated methods that keep millions of learners stuck for years. And while this is my personal journey, I want you to listen carefully because in many ways you might recognize yourself in my story. If you have ever felt embarrassed while speaking English, if you have ever stayed silent even when you knew the answer, if you have ever watched others speak fluently and wondered what they have that you don't, then keep listening because the turning point of my life began with a failure so uncomfortable that I still remember every second of it like it happened yesterday. For as long as I can remember, I wanted to build a global career, not just a local one. I worked as a mechanical designer and I loved my field. I spent years mastering software, improving my technical knowledge, staying late to complete projects, constantly telling myself that hard work would eventually open the right doors, and one day it finally did. A large European manufacturing company opened a role that perfectly matched my profile. I applied immediately. Weeks passed with no response. And then one morning, I saw an email with the subject line interview invitation. My hands literally started shaking. I read the email 3 times just to be sure it was real. They wanted to meet me. They believed I was qualified. That entire week, I imagined a new life, relocating to another country, earning in euros, supporting my parents better, growing professionally. Everything felt within reach. But there was one problem I kept pushing to the back of my mind. The interview would be entirely in English. I told myself, don't worry, you know enough. You've studied English in school. You understand grammar, you'll manage somehow, but confidence built on illusion never survives reality. The day of the interview arrived, I wore my best shirt, adjusted my camera 5 times, checked my microphone again and again, took a deep breath, and joined the call. 3 interviewers appeared on the screen. They greeted me warmly, but within seconds, my confidence began collapsing. Their accents were fast, natural, connected, nothing like the slow audio tracks we hear in classrooms. My brain tried to decode every word but couldn't keep up. Then came the first question. Adrian, could you walk us through your professional background and tell us about a challenging project you handled? I knew the answer perfectly. I had rehearsed it in my native language multiple times, but when I tried to speak, my throat tightened. Yes, I design machines, many projects. I solve problems. I work very hard. Even as the words left my mouth, I knew they sounded childish, incomplete, nowhere near the professional level they expected. One interviewer leaned forward politely, another nodded, but I could see it. That subtle shift in their expressions when they realize the candidate is not ready. They asked follow-up questions. I misunderstood one completely and answered something unrelated. After 15 painful minutes, they said, "Thank you for your time. We will get back to you soon." The call ended, and I just sat there staring at my reflection on the black screen, feeling a mixture of shame, anger, and disbelief. Years of technical preparation defeated by a skill I had underestimated. That evening, I received the rejection email. It was polite and professional, but the message was clear. We are looking for candidates with stronger communication skills. I read that line at least 20 times. Stronger communication skills, not better engineering skills, not more experience. Communication. That was the day I understood something that changed my entire perspective. English is not just a language. It is access. Access to opportunities, access to global networks, access to growth, and without it, talent often remains locked away. I realized I had been hiding behind excuses, telling myself that my work should speak for itself. But the truth is, the world listens to those who can speak clearly. That night, I made a promise to myself: no more avoidance, no more excuses. I would rebuild myself from the ground up and become fluent no matter how uncomfortable the process felt. Unlike most people, I didn't rush to enroll in another expensive course, not because courses are always bad, but because I had already experienced their biggest flaw. They focus heavily on information, but very little on transformation. Months earlier, I had paid for a structured program, memorized hundreds of words, completed grammar worksheets, scored well on tests, yet froze in real conversations. Knowledge without application is useless. So instead of asking, where can I study, I asked a better question. How do people actually become fluent? What are they doing daily that others are not? That question led me to design a system based entirely on real-life usage. And the first surprising rule I created was this: stop chasing new vocabulary. Start using the vocabulary you already have. During my first 2 weeks, I refused to learn new words. Instead, I wrote down 60 sentences that could carry me through everyday situations. Sentences like, "Could you say that again? Give me a moment to think. What do you recommend? Let me explain." Something incredible started happening. My hesitation reduced because I no longer had to invent sentences from scratch. The next habit felt strange at first, but became one of the most powerful tools in my journey. I started talking to myself constantly in English, not silently in my head, but out loud whenever I was alone. While cooking, I would narrate, "I'm chopping vegetables. The knife is sharp. This smells good." While driving, I would describe traffic, signals, buildings, weather. It felt silly for the first few days. Then it felt liberating because I had created an environment where mistakes carried zero embarrassment. Within 10 days, my brain stopped resisting English and started accepting it as a working language rather than a foreign one. After that, I introduced what I call controlled imitation. Every day, I picked short clips from interviews, podcasts, or films, listened carefully, paused after each sentence, and copied the speaker exactly. Not just the words, but the rhythm, stress, and emotion. Language is music as much as it is logic, and by training my ear, I was simultaneously training my tongue. Pronunciation improved faster than I thought possible. Around the 3rd week, I attacked the biggest enemy of fluency: mental translation. If you think in one language and speak in another, you will always feel delayed. So I trained myself to observe the world directly in English. The sky looks cloudy. That child is running. The cafe is crowded. This coffee tastes bitter. These micro thoughts gradually rewired my reflexes. Then came the question expansion drill. Every day, I asked myself simple questions and forced longer answers. What did you accomplish today? At first, I would say I finished a report. Then I pushed further. I finished a report that took 3 hours because the data was complex. Adding layers trained my brain to stretch ideas instead of stopping early. Vocabulary growth became effortless once I abandoned memorization and adopted storytelling. I would choose 5 words and build absurd, vivid mini-stories because the brain remembers what is emotionally colored. If the words were fragile, storm, shelter, flashlight, rescue, I imagined being caught in a storm, finding shelter, signaling with a flashlight, and being rescued. Weeks later, those words remained crystal clear. By the 2nd month, I made English unavoidable. My phone, laptop, and social media switched entirely to English. I followed creators who spoke clearly, listened to podcasts during walks, and replaced background music with audiobooks. Immersion is less about location and more about exposure. Confidence, however, required confrontation, so I joined online speaking rooms where strangers practiced together. My first session was terrifying. My voice trembled. But nobody laughed. Everyone was learning. That realization dissolved half my fear instantly. Progress accelerated because courage compounds. Grammar stopped being a monster once I treated it as pattern recognition instead of rule memorization. Whenever I heard a structure repeatedly, I adopted it. Small corrections stacked into noticeable polish. Shadowing became a daily ritual, 20 focused minutes that sharpened both listening and delivery. Movies turned into training sessions rather than entertainment because I paused, repeated, and matched tone until lines felt natural. Somewhere around month 4, an unexpected shift occurred. I caught myself reacting in English emotionally, not mechanically. Humor landed faster, responses arrived without translation. That was the moment I knew fluency was no longer theoretical. To test myself, I scheduled another international interview. This time I prepared differently. Instead of memorizing answers, I practiced thinking aloud. The interview felt like a conversation rather than an examination. I explained ideas clearly, asked thoughtful questions. And for the first time since the power of articulation, days later the offer arrived with a salary that once felt unreachable. I called my parents immediately. Hearing pride in their voices made every uncomfortable practice session worth it. Looking back, the lessons are simple yet demanding. Mindset determines trajectory. Immersion multiplies exposure. Speaking destroys fear. Listening refines intuition. Consistency beats intensity. And fluency is not a gift granted to a lucky few, but a result earned through deliberate repetition. If you commit daily, even when motivation fades, the version of you that once felt stuck will slowly disappear, replaced by someone capable, confident, and globally ready. Begin before you feel prepared. Remain patient when progress seems invisible, and trust that disciplined effort always compounds. Because one day you will speak effortlessly and realize the barrier you feared was never permanent. It was only waiting for you to walk through it.